On March 31st, places like California will be celebrating Cesar Chavez Day, the co-founder of the United Farm Workers. Now, the reason why I'm addressing this Cesar Chavez holiday, and by extension the United Farm Workers in this video, is because there's information in regards to their organizing tactics, language that they used in the 60s and 70s that the majority of us, people of Mexican, Central American descent, and people of other communities are not aware of this information. And where this information comes from is from their actual newspaper called El Malcriado. And in reading their articles, these two things jump out. Their language they used and these organizing tactics. Now, some historians, in regards to these tactics, some historians have written about it, including Chicano studies historians, but apparently this information has just stayed within the walls of the university. Now, what this tactic was, this organizing tactic, was that the UFW in the 60s and 70s had, to a certain extent, a working relationship with Border Patrol. And how this worked out was that as the UFW as they were picketing and striking certain ranches and certain farms, the owners of these farms and ranches would then go on and bring in other Mexican migrant farm workers to come and do the work that the strikers were not doing. And in doing so, these other Mexican migrant farm workers would cross the UFW's picket line, therefore making them strike breakers. Now, what the UFW would do in response is that they would then work on gathering the names of these strike breakers and submit the names to Border Patrol, and then pressure Border Patrol to come and deport us, to come and deport these individuals. Now, the earliest case where I've been able to see that this took place, according to Malcriado, was in 1968. And there's this one article where they mention a list of names of people who are being deported, and they list other names of people who are under investigation by immigration. And then in the article also mentions that if you're a Mexican migrant worker with a green card and you want to protect the privileges that come with a green card, then don't cross the UFW's picket line. So once again, what this article confirms is this working relationship that the UFW had with Border Patrol. Now, another tactic that the UFW practiced now more into the early 70s, like 73, 74, and 75, is this tactic known as the wet line. And what this wet line was the UFW going down to the U.S. and Mexican border. It was what I've been able to read. It took place more in the Yuma, Arizona, Mexican border. And what they would then do is they would then establish a camp there at the border and patrol the border. And what they would then do is notify Border Patrol wherever they seen our people crossing this European-made border. Wherever they seen us, quote unquote, crossing illegally, they'll go and tell Border Patrol to come and take action. Now, this is confirmed by an ex-UFW member by the name of Epifanio Camacho, who denounced this tactic and other tactics which made him withdraw from the organization. But in reference to this tactic, Camacho says that, with a leader like Chavez, our community does not need enemies. So that's his response to this wetline tactic. And just to make a connection, now we look at the 2000s and, we look into what the Minutemen were doing. They're basically doing the same thing that, the UFW was doing in the 70s, the early 70s. So just making that connection there. Now, like mentioned, another thing that's striking that comes out from their articles is the language that they used. And what type of language that they used was, they would use words like illegal immigrants, illegals, and the most offensive word that they would use is the word wetback to make reference to us that were here, quote unquote, undocumented. And in seeing that, and reading these articles, it was hard to believe that the UFW was using such racist and hateful language. The W word is the terminology of white supremacists. And to see them using this, it's very upsetting. And once again, I was thinking, like, how many of our people know about this? Which is why I'm sharing this information with y'all. So this is the language that they used. And not only was it, woven in the text of El Malcriado in their articles, but their own leadership also used this language. In a 1968 article by they interview the vice president of the UFW, who is a man by the name of Julio Hernandez. And in this, it's a question and answer article, and he's asked, one question that he's asked is, why is it that the UFW is working with immigration? And he goes on to say that, well, you know what, it's because there's a lot of illegals, and basically the Border Patrol has a job to do, and that's to deport them. And then later on in the article, he goes on to say that, yeah, you know what, it's because there's a lot of wetback scabs here. And so in seeing that, it became obvious that the UFW's leadership also, used this language. It wasn't just, within the text of the nameless authors in Malcriado, no, but its own leadership. So in seeing this, once again, the majority of us, people of Mexican, Central American descent, we don't know this information. I didn't know this, until like about 8 months ago. And so we could bet if we were to ask the random person walking down Cesar Chavez Boulevard in the heart of an indigenous community, now known today as Boyle Heights and East LA, they would not know this information. And in doing this this video, in preparing for this video, I called 4 UFW offices throughout California, and I asked the people who I got to speak with. I asked them if they were familiar with these tactics that the UFW used and the language that they used in the 60s and 70s. And I asked them if they were familiar with it. 3 of them said that they were not familiar with it. Another person said that, he could care less what happened 50 years ago. Sad but true, that was his response. But what this highlights is that, that their own membership is not familiar with this information, which is representative of our own community, right? So the reason why I'm sharing this video, this information with you, is because come March 31st, or the days that you'll be given be given the day off from school or from work to commemorate Chavez, Cesar Chavez, we got to keep this information in mind, these facts in mind, and think twice and say, this is not a person, to revere, to emulate, to give a holiday to. And it's knowing this information that would allow us to come to these conclusions. And, because another thing that's important to keep in mind is that when we think of the UFW and Cesar Chavez, we think of a leader who was a leader of a nonviolent organization, of a nonviolent movement. But keeping this into consideration now, what I just shared with you, them calling, giving a list of names to Border Patrol and pressuring Border Patrol to deport these individuals, those are violent actions. When they went down to the border and patrolled the border in their wetline tactic, those are violent actions. When they used the W word to make reference to the so-called undocumented Mexican migrant farm worker, that's violent language. So having this, in mind should allow us to, think twice about this so-called holiday, and the bigger picture about all this is that that this is the importance of reading, getting into the discipline of reading and studying, and which will allow us to dig into these primary sources and secondary sources to dismantle these American holidays, to dismantle our colonized condition. And so I'm encouraging you all to, let's get into the habit of reading and studying, and that way we could dig into this ocean of literature that's out there, so that, we could question, these so-called holidays, these fallacy holidays, and so we could see things clearer. And once again, to plan for a better future, right? So on that note, I want to invite you to a blog, and there's a link below to a blog that I put together to share with you these primary sources, these secondary sources that has allowed me to come to these conclusions. And on that note, I want to say thank you for watching, and may you all have a good one.